Okay, this is Jay Young, educating the world about Bitcoin in his own way with his
I can.
deep passion.
Yeah. All right, so let's do this. Let's see if I can do a screen share. Let's see now. Let me make sure. Share the screen. Okay, we're gonna do. Can you see that?
So what I see is a presentation in OneNote, and I have the kind of outline on the left side. So you need to open. You actually need to open on your desktop, like escape out of this. So the Zoom's a little box, and then you need to open what you want to show. There you go. Beautiful. Oh, look at you. Look at you.
All right. So I apologize if this is a little bit. Let's do this. Let's do this. You know, let me flip this around.
How many screens do you have in front of you?
Just two.
Okay.
And also, I didn't realize this, but they asked if I wanted to, what do you call it? Update to Windows 11. And
yes.
I foolishly did. So irritated that I did that. Let's see now. What I'm trying to do is have my notes in one. Can you see that screen okay?
I do. I see it in presentation mode. So okay. It's beautiful.
Right. So I had some in here around so this is a presentation or a webinar that I had given for a group of individuals who were interested in Bitcoin as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip forward a little bit, and I'm going to go right into I guess some of the attributes and characteristics of Bitcoin. I'm not going to get into what's beneath the hood for now. Okay.
Okay.
So full disclosure, don't trust anything I say. Do your own research. I will not be giving any financial advice. I'm only going to be focused on Bitcoin. I know there are other crypto assets out there. I do own some Bitcoin, so I want to give full disclosure on that. I also have an assumption that you have an interest in property rights. And now these two right here, interest in property rights in a smattering of knowledge of economics. I put those in there because of the group I was giving this presentation for. So I don't know what your interest is around property rights and economics, but that's okay. You don't have to, it's not a presentation necessity. And then if you want, I'm happy to send this presentation to you.
Bless you.
All right, so what I had done previously was I had actually split this up into three major pillars or phases. The first was everything leading up to the invention of Bitcoin. Phase two is basically Bitcoin itself. And then phase three were the impacts to economics and politics. And with that, I was making some forecasts out there. I'm going to go right to phase two for now, just to answer your question directly, okay? But we can absolutely go to any other phase or any other part of this presentation that you want. I will also focus a little bit on the misconceptions, misnomers, and outright lies.
Okay, great.
And also, as a motivator, I'm going to go into the historical comparison between Bitcoin versus gold and Bitcoin versus silver. It's just a couple of graphics in there.
Okay.
So I'm going to flip forward just a little bit. And what's in scope is basically what Bitcoin does at a very high level, at a very abstracted level, some of the basic attributes and functions of Bitcoin as what we call sound money or good money. And then for right now, what's out of scope is what happens underneath the hood. Again, I'm more than happy to go into that as we finish this. No financial advice. We're not going to get into math or crypto, you know, and for the presentation, I skipped the risks, but if you're interested in talking about risks, I'm more than happy to go into that. I think risk is actually one of the most important topics to talk about. Okay, because I used to be a commodities and futures trader, and I have a high tolerance for risk, but I also have a high aptitude for managing risk and, you know, mitigating it. So you'll hear me talk about that quite a bit.
Okay.
All right. So real quick, when we talk about intangible private property, the reason why I'm focusing on this is because people say you can't have money unless it's backed up by something, such as the dollar has to be backed up by gold. So there has to be something tangible in order for you to actually own something. And what people don't realize is that actually we deal with intangible stuff all the time, right? Such as stocks or bonds, right? Songs, you can buy songs off of the Apple Store, right? Kindle ebooks, patents, right, are part of intellectual property. The only thing you own is an idea, a very well thought out idea. Copyright, trademarks, right? And the thing that matters here, that's important for our learning is the last three. We have passwords, encryption keys, and cryptocurrencies. Okay, these are all intangible. All right. In fact, the thing that matters the most is the fact that we have information, right? Very specific information that the individual can control. Okay. So I'm going to skip over some of the history leading up to really the 2008 crash. If you want to go into that, I'm more than happy to. I love talking about this stuff. And by the way, we have never gotten out of the 2008 collapse. We just delayed it, a lot of the BS in there. Okay. The one thing I am going to say is I want to talk about is what we call good money, bad money, and Gresham's law. Okay. So I believe Aristotle, the famous philosopher, tried to come up with if not a good definition, at least a listing of attributes of money that is considered to be good money. Okay. And I remember it by the acronym DIFPERS, which is basically divisible, fungible or uniform, portable, reliable, and scarce. Okay. And then I added two other characteristics on there that I've never heard anyone else talk about: controllable and opportunity cost. So divisible basically means that if I have some sort of unit of money, that I can subdivide it into smaller pieces that make it easier for you and me to engage in trade. All right. So I don't want to have a piece of money that's so big that I can only buy a house with it, but I can't buy a pair of shoes. Okay. So fungible or uniformity basically means that if you have $1 and I have $1, we could literally exchange those dollars and they mean exactly the same thing. So no $1 bill has greater value than any other $1 bill. That's basically it. Okay. Portable basically means that in some way, shape, or form, I can take this dollar and I can bring it with me to trade value for value. So in other words, I don't have to throw a whole knapsack of coins over my back in order for us to engage in trade. And that also includes now, over the past few years, electronically. Okay. Reliable or durable and acceptable. That basically means if I have a dollar bill, that it's going to hold up to normal daily everyday use. And I think the average lifespan for a dollar bill is 6 months. Then you can trade it back to your bank, and they will send it back to the Fed. What used to be really important was having coins that were tough enough that they would be able to be used for daily use, and it would still be recognized as usable coins. Okay, and more importantly, if you're selling me something and I'm giving you money for it, you can look at this money or currency, and you can say, yeah, this is good. I accept this. This is acceptable. A fifth attribute of good money is that it should be scarce. It should be of limited supply. And most people don't think about that. The reason why this is important is because if it's not scarce, that means it can be readily brought into existence. So, for example, if we were on a deserted island and we were using, let's say, seashells as a form of currency, that's probably not a very good form of currency, because you and I could literally go out and just gather seashells all day, and we will artificially inflate the money supply. And after a while, because we have so much of something, each individual thing of that something, i.e. seashells, is worth less. Okay. So ironically, seashells have been used as a form of money, but literally in the mountains of South America. The reason why is because it's really difficult to go get seashells, to travel from the mountains, go to the beach, get them, and then bring them back and keep them in a whole fashion. So those seashells in that context are actually scarce, or they're limited supply. The last two characteristics, the ones I'm adding, are controllable and opportunity costs. So opportunity cost relates to scarce in the sense of if you make a decision, let's say a person who wants to mine for gold, they have to make a decision. Do I want to continue to work for someone else or have my own store? Or do I want to give up everything and go mine gold at Sutter, what was that, Sutter Mill in the 1849 gold rush, right? So they have to make that decision. So there's an opportunity cost. If I do A, I get something, but it costs me something in B. Or if I do B, I'm giving up all the benefits of A. Okay, and that is absolutely necessary in order to have good money, because now people have to make an economic decision of bringing more of this money into play, but giving up the benefits of other things like good trade, or they do good trade, but then they can't go out and just find gold or anything like that. And governments that print money, like the United States government is doing, they have zero opportunity costs associated with it. They can increase the money supply by tenfold in a few days. And now we have money that in our bank accounts that are worth less. Okay. Finally, the last thing is controllable. And when I say controllable, that means that if you want to buy something, legitimately buy something, you can just go buy it. And nobody can get in between you as the buyer and someone else as the seller and stop you from engaging in legitimate trade. Okay. Conversely, no one can stop you from receiving money. So if you want to sell a car to someone, no one can get in the way and say, "Oh, sorry, Susie, you can't take that money." Right? That we're gonna stop you from doing that. So that's really important. And also along with that is government cannot go in by capricious manner and simply just take your money, which we saw during the FDR administration under Executive Order 6102, where the government basically ordered every American, you must give up all your gold and you are required to sell it to us at a price that we determine. Okay, so they could basically do that by executive fiat and say, you have to give us your gold. All right, with Bitcoin, that may not be the case. All right, so we talk about cryptocurrencies. All right, before we get into that, there are a few things that we kind of have to do to kind of get our heads wrapped around this. The first thing we have to do is throw out certain concepts or certain phrases, such as governance, central banks, central authority, fiat, which is a Latin term for decree, authority, or order, third-party trust, and censorship. I know this sounds really, really vague and very abstracted, okay? But we're so used to being in a world where it is necessary to think of how does money work And we're so used to thinking, well, we have to trust government, we have to trust banks, we have to trust institutions to hold our money for us or to clear transactions for us, what they call the payment rails. That's really strange for us. And it's, I'm not going to say it's worked, but it's the only solutions that we've had up to this point, right? In terms of being able to do business with each other. And we've always been dependent upon government to be that ultimate authority which decides how much money is out there and who gets it and who gets to spend it and receive it. Again, I know that sounds strange, but there are a multitude of examples of government just stepping in the way and say, sorry, you cannot conduct business. So the easiest way that I've heard to ever describe Bitcoin in a very abstracted way is it's a very secure messaging app on top of gold. So in a way, you could email. What if you could email gold? What if you could WhatsApp gold to someone? That's a pretty crazy thing to think about, right? Is the idea that you can just message someone value, right? We always think of, well, at a bare minimum, I have to give them something physical. Well, if you think about it, we're actually already used to doing non-physical value transactions. We do it with Visa. We do it with MasterCard, right? We do it with, somebody's trying to get in. So, oh, here we go. Hi, Abby, how are you doing?
Hey, Jay, sorry I'm late.
That's okay, no problem. So Susie and I went ahead and got started, and I'm just going to keep on plowing forward. So that's the basic idea, is that we can trade value, and it doesn't have to be anything physical that's trading places there. Okay, so the most basic definition that I have, this is something I came up with, and it could be wrong, so don't take this as gospel, is a cryptocurrency is an intangible digital asset that can be used as a storehouse of value, a system of accounting, as well as a medium of exchange for goods and services which require no central authority and utilizes a trustless methodology via cryptography, a form of math, for ensuring that all trades and exchanges are cleared and accounted for promptly and properly. I'll say it again. And
wait, say it again. Can you give it? Can you show it? Can you include it? Because it sounds brilliant. And I captured about 6 words.
Okay.
and I got some of the gist. And it sounds like you've covered so many bases, and you're pointing to attributes of maybe new money, new
That's right.
A new way of thinking.
That's right. You got it. So let me do this. Let me try to put in the.
Hi, Abby. Ah, you're with us fully. You can unmute because there's just the 3 of us.
So I just put it in the chat.
Oh my God, you're awesome. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Let's do this. Try to get the right one. Okay. Can you see that okay?
That's fabulous.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, okay.
Okay, you're going to say it again.
Yep. So it's an intangible digital asset that can be used as a storehouse of value, a system of accounting, and as well as a medium of exchange for goods and services, which requires no central authority and utilizes a trustless methodology via cryptography, which is a form of math, for ensuring that all trades and exchanges are cleared and accounted for properly and promptly. That is, if you think about it, all the things I said that we have to throw out, central authority, trust, fiat, all those things, they all get thrown out. And this takes everything that we know about money and currency and turns it on its head, right? Because all the things that we attribute in terms of a regular economy and depending upon government or other institutions to clear trades, to ensure that trades are actually done in an accurate fashion and done in a quick fashion, all that stuff is out. And now what we're trying to do is get rid of what they call counterparty risk. And that basically means me depending upon someone else to do their job. So that way you and I can actually trade, okay? And that seems strange, like, well, is that really that important? It is if we go back to maybe 2008 and we saw that there were many institutions that had set up contracts with each other in terms of things like credit default swaps, collateralized debt obligations, things like that. They had these contracts, and what ended up happening was one institution, quote unquote, lost the bet, and they couldn't pay another institution. So this other institution had what they call counterparty risk with the first institution. That being the first institution couldn't pay the second institution. And we're kind of running into that now, where we as regular people who maybe use dollars, we are dependent upon the government not to inflate away or inflate the money supply so badly that the value of our dollars that we hold in our hand, in our wallet, in our bank accounts, that they shrink over time. And right now, they're shrinking at about the rate of about 15% per year. That's a lot. If you think about it, if you held the same job for 10 years and the value of the dollars that you're holding go down by 15% per year, it only takes about, what that would be, 5 years when the value of those dollars go down. That means if you made the same amount of money over 5 years, you have literally half as much purchasing power at the end of 5 years as you had when you started the job. And at the end of 10 years, you would have 75% less purchasing power, or only 25% at the end of those 10 years. That sounds crazy, but that's literally what's happening is our dollars, the purchasing power of our dollars is being diminished greatly. And that's important because we are actually, as individuals, we have the counterparty risk of government acting acting capriciously, or they're being fickle with the money supply. And so we as individuals run into that problem every day. Prior to 2009, there was no other alternative. We had to depend upon the government to do the right thing. And now that may not be necessarily be the case. Okay, so
wait, can I ask Abby do you say your name Abby or Abby?
It's Abhi, yeah.
Abby, are you a math whiz and economics whiz, and is this like an area that you're really familiar with?
No, I'm not a mathist. I'm a product manager. So. But yeah, I used to be a programmer earlier. Yeah, so I have some basics about blockchain. Yeah.
Okay. Because Jay, I loved your analogy about the seashells on a deserted island. That explains exactly what you just said about depending on a government who's inflating the money supply, collecting more seashells, and then our seashells aren't worth as much. That's how I learn, and I really appreciate that analogy.
By the way, so that the seashells, being able to have inflate the supply of seashells on the one end, right, which makes it bad money or very poor money. The other end of the spectrum is gold, right? And the reason why this is important is because gold is actually very difficult to mine, to get out of the ground, to refine, to process, and to put into the money supply. It's very difficult to do that. It requires a great amount of work to make this happen. And that's why, and by the way, there's a lot of opportunity cost associated with mining gold. Okay. That's why gold has been such a good store of value, or a way of what they call backing your money or backing your currency, is you have your paper dollars, but you have those dollars tied to gold. All right. Or sometimes you actually exchange the gold right there. And if you think about it, for millennia, people used gold as a way of freezing their work, the work that they've done. They put it in this thing we call gold. They may have worked for 100 hours, and they can put it in this little coin, this gold coin, and then they can exchange that gold coin for someone else's valuable work. All right, that's really important. Is that for a long time, gold was the hardest form of money that we had. All right, and now we have something that has many of the advantages of gold, and very few of the disadvantages of gold, because gold is really good. But could you imagine trying to carry gold around with you, when you wanted to exchange? That's not easy to do.
That was excellent too, that it has the advantages of gold, and the disadvantages. Say that again.
Sure. So gold has some disadvantages. Basically, is that it's very heavy and dense, right?
Yes.
If you want to trade, if you and I want to trade, I have to carry this pile of gold around with me. It could be a pile of gold coins, could be in my pocket, whatever that may be.
Okay, gotcha.
It's not convenient, right? And by the way, that's the reason why dollar bills or paper currency came about, is because it's easier to carry around these paper notes, these paper bills, than it is to carry a pile of gold, right? And it's also, you can also divide those up much more easily than the gold. It's really difficult to divide up gold arbitrarily. All right. Well, something like Bitcoin, it doesn't run into those difficulties that the gold has. It doesn't run into those challenges. So before we get into all that, I want to make sure we have a kind of a definition or a separation here. Is when we talk about Bitcoin, there are actually two types of Bitcoin when someone talks about it, and they use the term synonymously, and it's understandable why, but let's split them up so we know that we're talking about the same thing. So if we talk about Bitcoin tokens and the Bitcoin network, okay? So Bitcoin tokens, when I say tokens, it's like when you go down the Garden State Parkway, you have to use a token to go through the toll booth, or if you went to the arcade, you have the tokens you use to play the games. Technically, the coins that you have in your pocket, those are tokens too. They're a representation of value, okay? So if I talk about Bitcoin tokens, this is the system of accounting that we use within the Bitcoin realm, such as I have 2.5 Bitcoin tokens. That's the same as saying I have 2.5 Bitcoin. That's basically it. So if someone says I have half a Bitcoin, they really mean I have half a Bitcoin token. Okay. Then there's the Bitcoin network. And this is the system of sending and receiving Bitcoin tokens, such as I will send one Bitcoin token to you over the Bitcoin network. Okay. It's basically the same as saying, I'll send you one Bitcoin. Okay. I know this is very abstracted, but I think it's really important to understand there's the Bitcoin tokens and the Bitcoin network. So as an analogy, the dollars in your bank accounts don't actually exist, but we do count them from an accounting point of view. All right. So the analogy there would be the dollars in your bank would be analogous to Bitcoin tokens. Okay. With current price of Bitcoin, if you had $60,000 in the bank, that would be one Bitcoin token. Okay. Conversely, methods of payments would be analogous to the Bitcoin network. These would be doing a bank wire or ACH, automatic clearinghouse, debit cards, credit cards, checks, money orders. Okay, so these are methods of sending payment to someone else. And what's behind all of them is a network, right? It could be Western Union. It could be the Swift banking system or Swift credit card payment system. It could be the banking system and the central banks, right? So again, you have the tokens and the networks, okay? So let's get into an abstracted use case for us mere mortals, okay? So in the same way that very few people actually know how a car works, very few people actually know exactly how a car works, as odd as that sounds. There are many functions below the hood of the car that have been abstracted away. And what I mean by that is the advanced spark timing for the spark plugs, the timing belt that goes connects to the crankshaft, right? The carburetor or the fuel injector, how the hydraulics work. Most people, if you ask them, they wouldn't be able to understand that. So the automotive industry has done a great job of taking all these really base functions and abstracting them. So you basically only have to do three things: turn the steering wheel, hit the gas or the brake, and use the shifting lever. They've reduced all of these dozens of different systems and functions. They've reduced them to three things, basically. Okay. That's what we want to do. All right. And this hopefully makes things a little bit easier and more approachable. Okay. So if we think about it, what's the one thing we probably all want to do with money? We want to hold it. We want to keep it. And ideally we keep it safely. Well,
wait, we want to hold it, we want to keep it, and we want it to grow.
Yeah, exactly. What we want to grow. Absolutely. So abstractly, many times we keep that money in a wallet. Well, believe it or not, there are what they call Bitcoin wallets out there. There are many types, and we can talk about that at a later time, or this today, whatever you want. But in a nutshell, you need some way to hold your Bitcoin. Again, Bitcoin is an abstraction. What we're holding in there is what they call your encryption keys. Some might call it passwords. That's, if you just think passwords, I'm holding my passwords, you're good. Okay. The next thing we want to be able to do is receive money, because ideally we get paid to work, or like you said, we get paid to receive money whenever we grow our money, right? And we do this through a receiving address. And if you think about it, that's not much different than if you're working for a company and they say, do you want a physical check, or do you want us to wire the money in your bank, right? Direct deposit, right? And they use paychecks, they use ADP, whatever. Well, what do? You got to bring in a voided check, which has your routing number and the bank account. Bitcoin does pretty much the exact same thing. You have a wallet and you have an address in that wallet called a receiving address. That's basically it. You supply them with those two pieces of information. Again, there are things that happen underneath the hood to make all that happen. The other thing you want to be able to do is send money so you can pay for stuff. Well, then you're doing the exact opposite. Someone is giving you not the routing address, but their wallet, and not their bank account number, but your receiving address. And when you want to pay someone something, you say, okay, here's the wallet, here's the receiving address. That's basically it. All right. There are, just like with Visa, there are fees. All right. Now, granted, those fees are typically paid by the vendor, not by us. But if you talk about a fee to clear the transaction, okay, there are fees associated with that. And right now, the fees for doing a transaction they're not cheap, but they're not expensive, but they're not cheap either. But there's something else we're going to talk about sometime much later on called the Lightning Network. Okay. And the Lightning Network is what we call this a layer 2 solution that makes the cost of transacting very, very cheap. Sometimes fractions of a penny money. And the capacity for sending this is basically unlimited.
Mm.
I want to put this in context here.
Mhm.
Visa can handle about 20,000 transactions per second all over the world. Okay, that's a lot.
Wow.
Okay. Unfortunately, Bitcoin just by itself can only handle about 7 transactions per second. But the Lightning Network, when that finally gets up and running and really used around the world, has an unlimited number of transactions that it can handle per second.
Wow.
Okay. Finally, speed. Have you ever done a wire transfer?
I don't think so.
Okay, not a big deal if you haven't.
Wait, and we're not, like, tell me what, we're not talking about Venmo and things like that.
That's a good question. So let me rephrase that. Have you ever done a bank wire transfer?
Oh, yeah, from one bank to another. My money had to go from one bank to another, I suspect.
Yep.
It
Okay.
was a transfer.
Okay. So typically, bank wire transfers can take anywhere from 3 business days to
Correct,
5, 7 business days to clear. Right?
correct.
And there are so many. From what I've heard from different people, is from the time you step into the bank, right, to the time the other person steps into the bank to take out their money,
Mhm.
there are so many systems they have to go through just to be able to send the money. Then there are so many systems to be able to get it to the other bank. And there's so many systems you have to go through for the other person to pull the money out.
Mm.
Bitcoin does away with all that, number one. And number two, you can literally have a transaction that clears in 10 minutes.
Mm.
So if you think about this, I want to put this in context. It would actually be faster if I wanted to send someone money, all right? And let's say I want to send it to them in Japan. It would be faster for me to tape the money to an anvil and then FedEx it to Japan than it would be for me to send it over bank wire transfer. I could get the money there faster to Japan than that. That's crazy. And yet that is the accepted form of transfer value, high value from one party to the next. Is you're just gonna have to wait 3 days. You're just gonna have to wait 5 days. Sorry, that's just the way it is. Okay. With Bitcoin, it is much, much faster than that.
Okay.
So remember we talked about the 5 major characteristics of good money. Okay.
Yes.
It was disperse. Okay. So let's go into Bitcoin and let's break those out. And I'm going to try to be a little bit more specific without going too much into the technicals. Okay, so currently Bitcoin is about $60,000 per Bitcoin. And when we say that there are only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever produced in the lifetime of Bitcoin, people say, well, 21 million, well, how are you supposed to, there are 7.5 billion people all around the world. How are you supposed to get Bitcoin to people? There's only 21 million. That's not usable. Plus $60,000. I'm not going to trade $60,000 every time I want to trade one Bitcoin. Well, luckily, Bitcoin is highly divisible. In fact, it's infinitely divisible. Right now, one Bitcoin can be subdivided into 100 million smaller pieces. Okay, and each one of those little 100 million pieces has been given a name called a Satoshi, named after the creator, Satoshi Nakamoto.
Oh, that's so cute.
It is.
Wait. So the each 1/millionth of the $60,000 is a Satoshi?
Correct. You got it.
Okay, cool.
And just to clarify, it's actually not 1 million, it's actually 100 million.
100 million. Thank you for the correction.
Yeah. So if there are 21 million Bitcoin that can be produced, and each Bitcoin could be subdivided in 100 million smaller pieces, if you do the math, you end up with 2.1 quadrillion.
I wouldn't want to do the math.
2.1 Satoshis. Now, at first it sounds, that's kind of dumb. Why would I give a rip about that? Here's the thing about it is this allows us to have money that can be used literally all around the world. That means
Mm.
of the 7.5 billion people on the planet, it is 100% available to people around the planet, that every person could own a few Satoshis. That would not be a problem, okay? Because it's so finely divisible. And here's the other part about it. If we got to a point as a planet or a society where we needed more pieces, that's okay. We wouldn't add more than the 21 million Bitcoin, but we could add finer divisibility. We could make it, instead of 100 million smaller pieces, we could actually make it 1 billion smaller pieces, right? And that would allow everyone to get to have access to these to Bitcoin.
Jay, can you do the translation for us math impaired folks? 1 Satoshi would be comparable to what cents?
Okay, that's a good question. So, you know, there's an account on Twitter. I'll have to see if I can forward it to you. It actually does the math for you.
Ah,
So let's just go with easy math. Let's pretend Bitcoin is $100,000.
okay, good.
100 million. 100, that's one. So basically it's about 1,300 Satoshis equals $1. Or on a per cents basis, that would be, I think, 13 Satoshis equals 1 penny, something like that.
Okay. Is Satoshi alive and well?
We don't know. There are.
It's so mysterious.
It is. But if you think about it, I want to kind of divert for just a second here.
Okay.
If we think about this, governments and established institutions are very threatened by Bitcoin, because typically for millennia, government has had power over the money supply. And this person or party of people, they created something that really pulls that power back from governments and institutions, and make sure that the individual has sovereignty. They have control over their own destiny with this good form of money. Well, let's say you were in government and you liked power. Do you think you would be agreeable or disagreeable to this person or party named Satoshi Nakamoto for taking away your power, right? So Satoshi was very smart, very wise in keeping a low profile, okay? And Satoshi, up until I think maybe 2009, 2010, something like that, would pop up every now and then, would email people. But then after that, when things started to get a little heavy, this person just completely stepped away, okay? It's a really cool story. There's actually a book that actually has all the correspondence, the known correspondence with Satoshi Nakamoto. And it's by email, obviously. So it's pretty cool. I haven't gotten it yet, but I want to read it. It's just fascinating. So no one knows. There is an individual by the name of Dr. Craig Wright. I think he's Australian, and he claims he's Satoshi, but he's demonstrably wrong. He's been taken to court a couple times about this, and they said, okay, if you're Nakamoto, prove it. And there are ways of proving this. He can never do it. It's like, okay, you're not this person. Just stop. Okay, let's go on the next thing. The next thing is fungible or uniformity. So just like if I
Are you saying funge or fund?
Fungible with a G is in golf.
Funge. I don't know this word.
Yeah, it's FUNGIBLE, fungible.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, in this context, it basically means $1 has equal value to the next dollar, all right? Or one Bitcoin has value, the same value as the next one. Also, in this context, it means it's very difficult to forge, meaning very difficult to how does it cheat, if you will.
Mhm. To manufacture
Exactly.
more. Mhm.
Artificially, exactly. So that's really important because as of right now, the United States federal government and the Federal Reserve do something that is totally hypocritical. They inflate the money supply arbitrarily and capriciously, right? So they literally just create dollars out of thin air for no work, right?
Right.
They expect us, you just have to take these dollars. You have to take them, right?
I always wondered about this. Yes.
But if you or I were to do the exact same thing, they call it forgery, and that's a federal crime, right? So it's not okay for us to do it, but it's okay for the federal government to do it. And by the way, this is the same globally. Well, at least for every country that has what they call a central bank,
Mhm.
is it's not okay for their citizens to forge things, but it's okay for the government to forge them. Okay. And with Bitcoin, it completely inverts that. It is equally difficult for everyone to manufacture Bitcoin. And there's a process called mining. You're mining Bitcoin. And as odd as it sounds, it means solving a mathematical equation. That's basically it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But what's cool about it, it puts every party on equal ground.
Mhm.
Let's see now. This meeting will end in 10 minutes. Upgrade now to remove the 4-minute time limit.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. So we may get kicked out. If we do, I will send another invite over WhatsApp and we can just restart this, okay?
Okay, right, because there's 3 of us.
Yeah, exactly. Which, okay, no big deal. Okay, so to be a little bit more specific about that, the rate of inflation that governments are using right now is anywhere from 5 to 15%. They're just arbitrarily and capriciously inflating the money supply, which also arbitrarily and capriciously deflates our purchasing power over time. With Bitcoin, because it's fungible, because it's uniform, and it's very difficult to forge, the money supply of Bitcoin is increasing, but it's increasing at a decreasing rate. What I mean by that is it used to be that the inflation rate for Bitcoin a few years ago was maybe 6%. Well, every 4 years, that inflation rate programmatically, meaning by rules, hard rules, that inflation rate drops by half. Okay. So 2 years ago, the inflation rate was about 3%. And then in May of 2020, by program, by rules, hard rules, that dropped by half again to about 1.5%. Nobody can step in and artificially increase that rate. Okay. That's one of the best parts about this is that even though we do have inflation, it is always getting smaller and smaller every 4 years. Nobody can step in and act with capriciousness. Nobody can be fickle, and nobody can hold a gun to anyone else's head and say, you have to print me more Bitcoin. All right. In fact, if anything like that were to happen, the rest of the Bitcoin network, the people who own Bitcoin, they would all reject those transactions. I know that sounds really weird, but this network is a purely voluntary network. And the reason why it works is because everyone is playing by the same set of rules. And if one actor, one party acts maliciously, the rest of the network can literally push out that person and say, sorry, we don't accept those transactions. We don't accept those forged or artificially inflated Bitcoin. And that's a very, very powerful thing. That literally puts power back in the hands of the individual. So that we had divisible, we had fungible. Now let's do portable. So this is easy to store. You can literally store on a USB thumb drive. You can store it on paper. You can put it in your safe. You can store it in your head. You can literally store this in your head. You could store it on your computer, a smartphone, a laptop. You could put it in email if you wanted to. So my point is, it's easily stored, and the cost of doing so is very, very, very small. And it's easy to transport. I can either send you Bitcoin over my wallet, or I can give you a payment. And the cost of the transaction is basically the cost of the electricity, which is fractions of a penny. Okay. Or if I have it on a thumb drive, or I have it on my phone, I just have it there and I just take that with me. Right. And no one could go along and say, oh, you've got Bitcoin on your phone. You can't see it. No one would even know to steal from you. Right. You want to talk about secure? There's an expression in the cyber security realm called security through obscurity, meaning if you don't even know it exists, you probably can't steal it. So let's go to the next thing. Reliable, durable, acceptable. It's easy to transmit and receive, right? Because like we said before, I can send it over a messaging app, or I could send it over what they call the Bitcoin wallet. And the other party can verify very quickly that those Bitcoin are viable. Okay.
Jay, list 5 organizations, companies that traffic in Bitcoin that I know of.
Okay, so one of the most famous out there is MicroStrategy. They are technically still an analytics company, and the gentleman's name, who's the CEO and I think the founder, is Michael Saylor. His last name spelled Saylor. He and his company put $3.15 billion worth of Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Elon Musk from Tesla has put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. If you go to bitcointreasuries.org, I think that's the name of the organization, they have a listing of companies that's any public company that has to list their assets. If they've purchased Bitcoin, it's on there. Some private companies that have divulged that they have Bitcoin are on there. Even some family offices are like that.
Wait, does this mean I could buy a Tesla with Bitcoin?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Because, you know, either I don't have a radar for it, but the only place that I've ever seen it was at a pot shop about a half a mile from my house.
Sure.
And that's it.
Yep. So believe it or not, another 2 places on your cell phone, there are a couple of apps, one called Cash App, the other called Venmo.
Yes, both.
You can buy Bitcoin and you can buy Ethereum.
Oh yeah, I just saw that.
Yep. So
you and I could do a transaction, like I could do a private lesson on Bitcoins and you could charge me 50 whatevers,
right,
50 Satoshis, and I could send you 50 Satoshis with Venmo.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's correct. Well, right now, I want to clarify, at least with Venmo and Cash App, I have not done any transactions with any cryptocurrencies, but I have bought Bitcoin and Ethereum with their apps, and I have it on my account, if that makes sense. I need to check to see transactions, because that's actually a good point. I know that Visa is looking to implement or include Bitcoin with them, and Visa is literally, they have what, hundreds of millions of customers around the world, right? If they were to plug Bitcoin into there, you want to talk about leveraging your customer base. That's a great way to leverage your customer base, right? I think MasterCard is looking to do the same thing. There's a company called crypto.com, I think, and I think they have issued their own Visa card where you can transact in dollars, but then you get rewards in Bitcoin.
Oh, wow.
There are many financial institutions that have purchased Bitcoin. They hold them, not only do they have them on the balance sheets, but for them, this is a part of their portfolio. They hold Bitcoin because they think it's that important.
Hmm, 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 hmm.
Does
But
that,
so from what you've said, there's not really, it's mostly, it sounds like, you tell me, it sounds like something mostly people are investing in and looking for ways to transact with each other, but there aren't a lot yet.
so that's a very good way of saying it. That's right. That's right.
Okay.
So they're holding on to it because they know this is the most pristine asset and the hardest form of money, the best form of money that's ever been created so far. Okay.
Hmm.
And so they want to get it now while it's relatively inexpensive, and they're going to hold on to it because they and others and I feel that the value, the purchasing power of one Bitcoin is going to go up a great deal. Okay. In terms of being able to do regular everyday trades, such as buying a cup of coffee, there
Mhm.
are a few places out there that you can use the Lightning Network for. And that's, remember we talked about that before, where you can literally pay for a $5 cup of coffee and it will clear in about 1 second. Okay. And then the transaction fee associated with buying that